The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. On that day, Jesus went out of the house and sat down by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood along the shore. And he spoke to them at length in parables, saying, "A sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep, and when the sun rose, it was scorched and it withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. But some seed fell on rich soil and produced fruit 100 or 60 or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I have chosen to continue with Christmas in July. Given the forecast for the week ahead, probably by Thursday we will need a little Christmas. In Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, the miserly Ebenezer Scrooge, when told that many of London's poor would rather die than go into a debtor's prison, responds, "If they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population." Later in the story, Scrooge is genuinely moved when the ghost of Christmas present informs him that Tiny Tim, the crippled son of his clerk, will die. And the ghost responds by quoting Scrooge's harsh words back at him. And then for good measure adds, "Man, if you be a man, forbear that wicked cant until you have discovered where the surplus is and what the surplus is. Will you decide what men shall live and what men shall die? It may be in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions, like this poor man's child." Today we engage with the parable of the sower. The parable of the sower, which in our minds and in our preaching is so often converted from the parable of the sower into the allegory of the soil. And apart from the wrongness of that, we may want to ask why. Why do we so often do that with this particular parable? Why are we drawn to focus on the soil when the parable is clearly about the sower? It's even entitled The Parable of the Sower. I'm going to be a bit mean and suggest that we do that because, truthfully, there is a little bit of Ebenezer Scrooge in all of us. A part of us that likes to determine which of our fellow mortals are the ones who are rocky soil and have no depth? Who are the ones being choked out by the various thorns in their life? Who are the ones who have fallen on the path and being devoured by the birds? And of course, well, we know who the rich soil is, don't we? At least we'd like to see ourselves like that. Our focus tends to be on the soil instead of the sower. And that really betrays a very human need we have to kind of categorize and to judge and ultimately to have some sense of control in a world and in a life where we often don't really have control. And besides, we want to make sure our resources are well used. So we determine where our help should go. Who are worthy? Who are the ones who are deserving? And who precisely is that? Who is worthy? By what criteria? And how do we know? We make judgments about worthiness even at this very table. How disturbing is that? A table at which really none of us are worthy. But we like to think maybe I'm a little more worthy than the other guy. None of us are worthy. And wouldn't it be great if we recalled and owned that sense of not being worthy when we are debating an act of charity or an act of justice or words of forgiveness or an act of kindness? In today's parable, the sower just scattered seeds indiscriminately all over the place. Now, to us, that doesn't seem very bright, and it seems quite wasteful. But to those on the footpath, those in the rocky ground, those trying to survive among the thorns, don't they need some sign, some evidence of hope, some glimmer that there is a God who cares, even if it's a fleeting and glancing glimmer? And remember, according to the parable, it only takes that little bit of rich soil to produce a tremendous harvest, a harvest that is so rich that it more than makes up for all the rest. And so, my sisters and brothers, I think today's gospel is telling us to sow freely, so wildly, so carefree, sow seeds of compassion, sow seeds of faith and of hope, of forgiveness, of justice and healing. Sow them with little concern for where they land. Let God take care of the harvest. As the Trappist monk Thomas Merton told us, our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they are worthy.